unanimously, no dissent. Any public comment? For the record, there are no members of the public here to comment. I'd like to get has everyone had a chance to review minutes? I don't believe I have.
Have you?
So I just get a motion to
continue.
Continue minutes.
Make that motion.
So moved.
Okay, carries unanimously, no dissent. We've got here with us this morning Rob McNeil, Director of the DPW, to present Solid Waste Enterprise Fund. We also have Chief Pittman for Police and Marine, and we have airports professionals here to present their requests. So we're going to jump right in with solid waste. Rob, we're looking at this budget year's requests and some discussion on out years, and then we'll cut you free.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. Glad to be back. I would characterize this as we're really waiting on a lot of backup quotes from Waste Options for many, if not all, of the requests for 21. The out years, we're doing a fair amount of planning with Waste Options to the degree that really hasn't been done in the past. But we are working to take advantage of the funds that we do have currently authorized and moving forward with projects for this year, 20. Basically, we're looking at, and since I've been here, we've uncovered a number of different items that we've had to take sort of immediate action on. Thankfully, in every case, we've been able to find the funds within the either capital or operating budgets to handle these items and to get them either repaired or replaced. Off the top of my head, I'll say the scale was a big one. We had an annual inspection of the scale. It's basically the lifeblood. It's the one item that really everything is measured by. So it is a critical piece. Last November was identified sort of mid-fiscal year that this thing was on its last leg, and it's just not something that is easily set up as a temporary scenario. So we took action to move forward and get that replaced, and it was I want to say about $175,000 item. So it's been replaced, it's working fine, it's up and running, and should be provide lots of service for many years to come. There's other, maybe not as dramatic as that, but other similar type of things that have come up through the years, and so we're trying to get better at working with Waste Options to understand real capital needs and forecast out. To that end, we have the primary feed conveyor. These are all MRF items because that is the only facility that is town-owned. They're currently responsible for their own the remainder of the buildings and facilities out there. And it's another larger discussion that I think the committee needs to be aware of is as we approach the end of the Waste Options Waste Services Agreement, which ends in 2025, we're having some real capital concern discussions with Waste Options, specifically about their own facilities and the incentive or disincentive for keeping them up. There's part of the Waste Services Agreement is a separation clause that values, their facilities. I believe it's a $1 million cost.
Rob, sorry to interrupt, but when you say keeping them up, you're saying physically, or you're saying to continue with this group?
Physically keeping them up.
Okay, just wanted to make sure I understand.
It's sort of, if they're going to invest in their own buildings to continue to provide the services that those buildings provide, what incentive exists for them monetarily beyond the end of their 2025 contract? So if they're putting in something a piece, let's call it a $100,000 pump, and it's got a 20-year life or a 50-year life, and so there's sort of that situation where why would they invest that kind of money into something that ultimately they're going to hand over to the town in 5 years. So we're getting at that with town council and our solid waste recycling work group and discussions with the town manager and the finance director to find out or to really understand what the value is for the separation for planning purposes for 2025. If the waste services agreement goes in a different direction, we don't end up with waste options again. And is the town obligated, or should we be, to share in the cost of these investments into facilities that we ultimately would own at the end of the agreement? So that's a kind of a sidebar. It's something that when we start talking about out years, to be well aware of. The rest of these items are fairly common and in keeping with some of the other facility asks and investments that we're looking to do in a meaningful way that we haven't in the past, including conveyor changeouts, updates to electrical systems that have been there, since the buildings were built, roof and siding investments, and updates to the drop-off chutes, and some lighting.
And where are we with the, I think it was the baler, wasn't that gonna be on for this year?
Yeah, the baler was
285
actually,
or something?
it was another item that was basically given a DOA. So the manufacturer came in and we were able to do it for another, I think it was about 180. I think we had planned
85, yes.
250 or something like that, 285. So it actually died before we could wait, and we actually were able to get it done using capital funds that we already had.
Okay.
So that was done, thankfully, again, for significantly lower than what was originally quoted. And there's 2 balers in that facility. The one that was the cardboard baler was the one that was replaced. The other one is going to be on an out year to be replaced. It's not on here yet. Oh, it is. It's in 24.
Okay.
On the out year.
Questions for Rob at this point?
No.
Well, you guys are contemplating. Rob, I presume that it's in the contract, but it may not be. I understand that the contract isn't one you wrote, and but improvements, who owns these improvements? Is it clarified in the contract? So, for instance, after 2020, 2025, we've made these capital investments. Does Waste Options get the improvement?
So
Do they sell them back to us?
The MRF building is ours.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
anything that we invest into that building remains ours.
Okay, thank you for clarifying,
Yeah.
because I didn't know that.
Sure.
Yeah.
On the flip side, though, it's really about any dollar that we invest into waste options facilities, which is, we're not there yet. That needs to be decided and obviously discussed through council. That's going to have to be calculated into the overall value of the facility at the end here in 2025. So there's some checks and balances that need to be in place before the town is going to be ready to commit anything there. I'm supportive, and I think it makes sense to invest, particularly if we're going to stick with the technology that we're currently utilizing, with a similar program to what we currently have. Continuing to improve it, but to stick with a C&D facility, a composter, and recycling facility, unless there is a market change to that operation. Obviously, keeping those facilities up to provide that service is going to be key. So part of what we're doing is this waste summit that we kicked off in July, and we're having monthly follow-up meetings to all the different operations within the waste services townwide, as well as at our specific facility, to help get feedback and input from the public to let them know what we currently do, what others do in support of waste services for the entire island. And the hope is to come back in December, circle back with a summary to the select board so that we can, together with the waste services work group, the town manager can sort of make recommendations of how we move forward beyond 2025.
So you're looking to council to get clarification so that there'll be guidance and clarification so that with respect to waste options, you can clarify expectations and responsibilities, not least of which is maintenance in between, if we pay for an improvement, between now and now in 2025. If at 2025 they stay on, a certain scenario may play out with respect to those assets, with respect to the contract amounts. And if they don't stay on, the same thing will play out. It would just be a different scenario.
That's right.
And this is going through, there's a work group.
There's a work group that's talking mostly about what's going to happen.
Future.
Up to, not just up to, but really beyond 2025.
Okay. I just wasn't sure. I just wanted to clarify whether there is a I guess, first of all, is there a necessity for involvement of citizen type persons who may be in the work group, or this is more of I could see where it's more of an administrative decision making based upon. I don't see that there's a recommendation role in this necessarily. These are business decisions that kind of fit into a bigger, broader picture that the work group is working out. So I guess what I'm trying to say is the work group is trying to come up with a solution or ideas on the solution for the future. And then that will inform the direction we go with the current technology. And as a result of that, what waste options may or may not own if they stay on, and what they may or may not owe us if they don't stay on. And it's all going to be informed by the bigger picture decision.
Correct. And I wouldn't characterize it as coming forward with a decision or a recommendation. I think it's going to be a number of options.
Okay, that's good to know.
At least that's my perspective on it.
Okay. Thank you. Anyone have any thoughts for Rob at this time on that? Rob, are there particular out-year requests that you have in mind other than the baler, or at this point it's kind of wrapped up in the fact that the vision hasn't been, we're unable to make a determination of where we're going to be heading?
Yeah, there's some other out-year items, but I think right now they're going to play out as to decisions that are being made as far as operational changes go. So if we're going to stick with technologies, I expect recommendations to really come together to the board within the next 6 months, because whether or not we continue to move forward with the technologies that we currently have, or are talking about making a market shift to a different or new technology for any or all the operations we have there, these things have to happen soon, because they're going to require permitting, and to even have something dramatically different in place by 2025, it has to start now. Mm-hmm. So I would really guess that the conclusions of the work group would be early calendar year 2020, which would, really set us up for what the immediate out years are going to look like for 22 and beyond.
Okay, makes sense to me. All right, anything else for us this morning?
That's all I got.
I had a quick,
Please, Christy.
Rob, the baler equipment or any of the conveyors, is that any equipment that we've had service contracts on? And do we maintain?
A couple of years ago, I think.
I would say
Or is it just on a?
we don't have service
Reactive
contracts with them. What happens is waste options basically will have a service provider come in and do that, and then we reimburse them for those.
I see. All right. And that's would they do that annually, or was that based on need and function of?
I think there's
equipment?
regular daily maintenance on things like conveyors,
Okay.
but then when they get to adjustment life or need, the belt change outs or things like that, they also have situations that arise where you get stuff that gets stuck in, and my tenure, I think they've had like one major overhaul to the MRF conveyor, mostly based on stuff that was stuck in and caused damage.
Okay.
But they do regular maintenance with their own staff pretty much daily. And then again, any vendor services that come in are just a simple reimbursement. So we don't have direct contracts with service providers.
Do they consult before they bring in service contractors?
We have consulted, let's say we've increased the communications with
Okay.
waste options dramatically. We basically meet with them every other week now. And I'm in contact almost daily with the operation manager over there.
Okay.
All right, thanks for coming in this morning.
Thank you very much.
We'll clearly be following up for some information when we're getting it.
That was a good way to put it. That was a good way to put it. I already asked her, that's why I asked. No, don't say nothing. Better off.
Hey, good morning, Chief.
Good morning.
How are you doing?
Good.
Welcome.
Yeah, let's see.
So, the same routine.
Same boring old routine.
Same
huh?
old stuff.
Okay. Well, we'll see if we can change it up a little bit.
What exciting requests do you have for us this morning?
Well, these are starting to seem like Groundhog Day to some extent. We've got a change in one of the requests. The first one is the patrol boat replacement. Actually, what we've done there, or what we'd like to do there, is we had a rather unexpected major failure of our pump out boat late this summer that caused us to have to shut down the harbor pump out program for about 3 days, which is not a good thing. And so what we've done is we've figured out how to extend the life of the boat we were going to replace by just repowering it with some existing funds out of Beach. And we'd like to reprogram this $150,000 to do a replacement, or not a replacement, to get an additional pump out boat so that we have two, so that we never have without the service out there. And quite frankly, we pump enough now that we could probably keep two busy all day long out there and actually cover it much better. So we've got a quote from Crosby Yachts, which is the provider of that particular style of boat like we have now, and they gave us a quote of $150 for a boat exactly as we have now. So it stays within the same price. The only thing I would probably want to do is add another $25,000 to that, because I know they didn't include things like a canopy, a radio, the hoses that you actually have to hook up to the pumps, and everything in there that we would all have to purchase. So that one I'd like to increase $25,000. And this is just yesterday when we came to got this quote finalized. The next issue that we have before you is, that's why I said when you said two, kind of confused this one for $500,000, which is the Loran sewer. That's actually the sewer department is running that project. I guess they're Weston and Sampson's figuring out doing the design work to extend the sewer out there in Wisconsin down to the Loran barracks.
Yeah.
I see it on our list though. And yeah, the public safety auxiliary building, that's the building that's been the Groundhog Day building.
Yeah.
Out here, that still we're pushing forward. It's it's a needed facility. It's going to be especially when the town gets to the point where they're seriously looking at what they're going to do with 2FG over here. Once that building is out of service, then we're completely out of service for maintenance and everything else. So it's rather than do everything at once, it would be, we think, more efficient to move forward with what we've done. And we've done with this project with the fire station, we've done a little bit of the site improvements there, getting it ready for a facility, and we've lowered the type of building from a brick and mortared building that it was originally designed and spec'd, and now we're down to just a metal modular building that we can put up there to get the work done. So, and that's it.
The price, the request cost on that?
Oh, that was about 3 million. That was a actual bid amount with an escalator, considering the bid was what, 2-3 years old now.
Yeah, that's why I was curious if you
yeah.
had a,
Yeah, they calculated in what the escalator would be.
okay,
So for that, so it should be plenty of money
so that's baked in the cake.
baked in the cake.
Okay. Comments, questions for Chief?
Did this have a history at town meeting last year? Was this on any article, right?
It failed to vote.
Fields
Yeah,
on the floor or at the ballot?
Ballot,
At the ballot.
I believe.
It was grouped in that big group of things that went down. I don't think it was listed individually.
yeah, which is a consideration.
Which things though? Was it other, like, I don't remember that one. I'm trying to
I
think.
think it carried on the, I apologize, I didn't.
Yeah.
It carried on the ballot with a group. They weren't individually voted on.
They were all voted down.
Yeah.
And at that time, the price was,
Well, I think 3 years ago when we started this, if it would have been built part of this project, the price would have been about just a little less, a little more than half of what it is estimated it will be.
yeah. And then and as of right now with the escalators, it's projected at about 3 million.
3 million, yeah.
So last year it was somewhere in the 2 to 2.5.
Yeah. And what we've lost is the mobilization
Yep.
savings.
Right.
You know, the company was already here.
Right,
the
so after this all done, they
workers.
have to leave and then come back.
Yeah.
And you said that you've already, done site work and staging, where is that?
It's back in the corner of this
Backside
facility.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that's the intended location for it, if and when it gets funding.
Yes.
So Chief, in the interim, I mean, 2FG probably isn't gonna happen before this does, but unfortunately, not that this should wait, but I think you get my drift. What are your thoughts and plans for facility use, and how does it affect, I'd like to get I know we've talked about this, I know it's Groundhog Day, but I think it bears repeating a little bit, you know, maybe 30 seconds or a minute. What's the effect on operations,
Well,
so on, the equipment, so on and so forth?
yeah, this has gone from what was just a police project to now it's a police and fire project. The fire department's the ones that are gonna really feel the impact of not having it, because we have an alternate facility to do our light maintenance in. They don't. They're gonna have to use the fire bays, as they currently do over in the other facility. They come in and they essentially take the equipment out of service in the fire base. Those aren't designed to be doing light maintenance and things like that, because they're not, you know, you have, they're designed to be operational, to be used. The facility back there will have in the structure, it'll have containments so that we can avoid any accidental spills from fuel or oil or diesel or something like that. It'd be contained. We're on the wellhead district here, so we're limited in what we can do. We can't do heavy maintenance, but we have to build something that's going to be able to mitigate any potential thing that occurs unexpectedly in that facility. There'll be trucks parked outside here that probably should be stored inside to some extent. Right now, if we lost 2 fairgrounds, that big expensive mobile communications trailer would be outside, and that would seriously cut its life expectancy. Right now, we expect another 20 years of service out of that. The fire department will have vehicles that will have water in them that they'll have to either drain for the winter, that they could have put inside for the winter. So I think it'll be operationally, it'll be tougher on them at first than it will us, but it will be a problem when we lose 2FG.
Okay.
I mean, these things unfortunately get that initial negative reaction around here. Sad. But this makes sense, just like we did with if we built the fire station, we built this building, it would have been free compared to now. You know, and I think that's what the chief is saying about this other one. So, but at least you kind of have a better location plan because of Wait Drive and how things have sort of kind of grown aggregately a little bit over the last few years. I agree with Steve. I don't see 2FG happening too fast, especially with the Iron Home stuff popping up now again. But same time though, this could be sold real easy if it's. Don't you guys have stuff out at the Loran? Or whatever it is out there. Don't you have stuff out there too?
Everywhere. Yeah,
Do you still want to build that building out by the airport too?
that's for the harbor master
Yeah.
facility. Yes.
So that's a completely different use,
Yep.
right? Okay.
That building, they'll actually do things like painting.
So that's a different type of
heavy
operation.
maintenance, heavy.
Because I think a little bit of this got mixed into that somehow. So this is totally separate. Everything's already on site in this campus,
Right.
and it would be in. Okay. So that's the best way to sell this. It's the campus thing. It's the whole. Everything's already in this area. You know. So.
And by sell, I know you mean provide information.
Yeah,
I
just
wanna
be people,
clarify.
convince people of that this isn't like a toy for, the town to play with. This is something where we take the other stuff and get it all together with fire and police.
Sure.
Well,
Makes sense.
what people don't realize is how much staff time hours we lose because we have different
Moving stuff around.
Well, we do some of the stuff that we have to, like working on ATVs and things out at Sconset at the Loran.
Yeah,
That would, we do it over here at 2 fairgrounds too.
Yeah.
And it depends on where that particular part happens to be that
Yeah.
day and somebody has to drive to Sconset or here or out there to
Yeah.
get the tool that they needed here, that kind of thing. It's better to have it all in one place.
yeah. Okay.
Much more efficient.
Mhm.
I think it
So
might
that's
be
it?
beneficial for you to, Chief, I would suggest that it would be beneficial for you to calculate at least to a reasonable extent, the cost of inefficiency that are associated with not having the facility. And to the extent, Chief Murphy's already been in, to the extent you might reach out to him, I'll be so bold as to ask that you do so. And I think full information needs to be presented at both town meeting where it then gets out to the ballot box. I don't know what the approach of the select board will be on having these voted in a bucket or having them listed individually or how they'll approach it. But I think either way, it's relatively light work to do the math, but it could be beneficial in the end. And I think every little bit helps. So if I can suggest that, I would like to.
Yeah, we'll be working with the fire department on that very
Okay.
definitely.
Yeah, that'd be great. And then we'll get a supplement. Also, if you could, once you get all your quotes together, go ahead and upload those. And
Yeah,
then we'll have them for our,
I don't have the program yet to be able to do that.
okay, so I'll speak with our finance director about that.
Right.
And just, Mr. Chairman, just one more.
Chris, one
Okay,
sec. Christie,
sorry.
and then, yeah.
Yeah.
Chief, I'm looking at the warrant from April, and it does say that the building would be utilized for stolen and found property. Is that still the case? And
Yeah, mainly what you're dealing with there would be like bicycles,
Small space.
large items that can't get into the basement here,
Yeah.
that type of thing. We pick up about 100 to 150 bicycles a year that are unclaimed, end up auctioning off. And right now we're storing them. See those Comex boxes? That's
Yeah.
where they're going right now
right.
in those things. So, and that makes it challenging for a lot of reasons. Somebody comes to try to identify it. If it's buried in the back of that box, they're not going to get a look at it.
Yeah.
It's just not possible.
We used to bury them in the bunkers at the airport.
Yeah,
I remember that.
Nat, did you have something else?
Yeah, I just want to ask him on the patrol boat. So this boat is going to be a pump out boat
it'll be a
too.
pump out boat.
That's good. So that's another way to sell that.
Yeah.
We got the big cry was to pump everybody out. Now we're pumping out so much we need another boat to keep doing it.
Yeah.
So that's important.
it's good. The program's getting a lot
It's a
better.
good
What-
problem.
What we're seeing, believe it or not, is a lot more people living on their boats out in the harbor than we used to see. And there are people that we pump out literally every day out there. So, many of those boats only have a 20 or 30 gallon holding
Yeah.
tank. So if you miss a day, they've got a problem, and we need to get it. We need to make sure it doesn't happen.
Chief, just incidentally, what's the charge on that?
For
Pump out, it's free. we actually, and we're kind of hopeful, we're keeping our fingers crossed that we might be able to get some grant money to fund this.
Clean Waters Act grant money?
Yeah, but it's, we get a grant every year from the state to reimburse us for the cost of our pump out service. So we keep track. One of the kids actually made an app on the phone that they actually can input all the data now and how much they're pumping out and the boats that it's coming from and how many people are on the boat. And after a couple of years, we'll have some phenomenal information.
That's great.
Yeah.
Okay.
Another algorithm's gonna, I
That's
sense
the
an
beauty.
algorithm
Yeah,
coming
there you
out.
go.
Ahead.
Is the boat used for patrol at all, or could it be redescribed as pump out?
Well, it's technically both, because what they do is they go out there and they'll send a couple people out and they'll just kind of patrol around in the harbor, be visible. About half of their pump outs call from being hailed down
Yeah.
when somebody sees them go by. And so that's what they'd like to, I asked Sheila, I said, we should have a spare, and our original conversation was setting up one of the existing boats with like a portable pump and this stuff and that. And we have a portable pump, but that gives us some other problems. And then it came down to it. She was saying that they got enough people and enough demand that they could use just another pump out boat, and that would actually alleviate the issue of if we had a failure. This year was last year and this year we kept having trouble with the transmissions going out, and literally just about a week before Labor Day, you put it in forward gear and you could get about half a mile an hour out of it. So that was after they replaced the transmission last year.
What was it attributed to?
It's a mechanical transmission, and what it is, it's my personal belief is you got young guys operating it and they're jamming it.
Yep.
front
First
and
thing that
back.
came to my mind was,
Yeah, but it's just the nature of having young people doing it. Now, what we're going to do this year, we're sending that one off this winter to get replaced with a hydraulic linkages, so it's not mechanical anymore. They tell us that'll be a lot easier on the boat.
it will be.
And then this new boat will have spec'd out with hydraulic linkages.
And then, so the boats and the parts, the equipment, I'm sure you thought about it, but being the citizen review, all I ask is parts interchangeable, not so much at the level of the boats, but pump out equipment and so on and so forth? Or are you getting into a new version of?
No, it's all interchangeable.
Okay.
Yeah, as a matter of fact, we spec it so that it not only is it useful as a pump out, it's useful for fire control as a reverse pump.
Oh, nice.
So it's got to be interchangeable, not just with our hoses for pump outs, but also with the hoses they use for fire and stuff. So that's one of Sheila's she does a real good job about making sure about that.
And how does that work, since you mentioned it, with personnel training and so on and so forth and interfacing? Is it actually fire department involvement, or because it's marine based, it's a different set of training and it's out of the marine
It is a
department?
little bit different training, but the fire department works with us on doing that at the beginning of the year. Actually, when we started doing that a couple of years ago, that's when we discovered the fire department's linkages didn't work with ours. And so we've completely changed over our linkages now so that we can use their hoses. So they come out with their pump and their hoses and all that, they can still hook up to our connections. But that was discovered during a joint training exercise. Then everybody was standing there we had the pumps, they had the hoses, and we couldn't do anything.
Well, better, it was a training exercise.
Yeah.
Peter?
Chief, just a crazy question, operational. How many citations are given out each year for someone illegally dumping into the harbor?
I don't know of any that have been given out for somebody dumping illegally. We get a lot of calls about that, though, and honestly, what we find 99% of the time, by the time we get there, either there's no discharge or no evidence of discharge, or it's somebody's air conditioner that's pumping overboard. Whoever called it in thought they were pumping out gray water or black water.
Yeah.
It's like speeding.
Yeah, it's unless there's some solids in the discharge, it's very difficult to, if you're going to be 30 minutes after the fact, it's very difficult to
Downstream.
identify that.
Yep. Thank you.
Stephen?
Yes, please. Sorry.
Chief, do you know if the grant funding covers the full cost of processing it from the boat to the plant? or is it just from the
It's
service
just
on the water?
just- as far as I know, it would be just, you mean our,
Yeah.
grant? It's just the collection and the pump out of it, yeah, so we actually pump, we were able to last year use some of that grant funding to put a second pump out
On the dock?
on the dock. It's used, so it's down by you don't see it, it's in that little shed. It's used where the pump out boat is so that they can pull in there and they can pump out the pump out boat into the thing without taking up the end of the dock. Now what I observed, my own observation this summer, was the kids still found it easier to come in, pull up the end of the pier, use the dock there to pump out that's outside where the hose is outside. They didn't have to unlock anything. They didn't have to do anything. They just grab the hose and do it. The other one, they have to get up out of the boat. They have to go to the shed. They have to turn on the pump and they have to run the hose out and then put it all away. But we do have, the bottom line is if the end of the pier pump out breaks down, we have an alternative on the pier that we can use.
So when the when it's deposited onto the dock for further processing and removing from the water,
Yeah. It just
is it
goes
the town picks up?
Yeah, it just goes directly into the sewer and goes to the sewer treatment plant. So the town is picking up essentially the cost of that.
It's a lot.
Yeah, I don't know
But
how
you
they.
gotta think about where we've been.
Yeah,
Like, if 10 years ago, no dumping and all the signs and all the, negative press, and now we're doing it for free 10 years later, like it's nothing. You got to think of how we got here, not of like, oh my God, we're giving something else away. You know what I mean? Don't turn it. I'm not talking to you. I'm just saying you're bringing up something. I'm just trying to bring it back around.
I guess.
Steamship spent bazillions to put holding tanks on the boats after they put in secondary treatment facilities on all the boats. Had to rip them out and put because of all the negative press. When you're out in the middle of the ocean, the secondary treatment, and you dump it 13 miles out, it's nothing. But you can't say that anymore. You can dump it in the middle of the Atlantic and you'd be arrested today. It's crazy. So it's just, this is normal now. Figuring out how to charge, I suppose that may be for the next group. I don't know.
I mean,
yeah.
people assume that the charge is going to be through the roof because it's here.
You're right.
But that doesn't mean you can't assess a stipend.
No,
to
I'm
cover-
not saying we shouldn't charge. I ain't saying that. I'm just saying that's like the next step of a long process to get to what he's saying now.
Well,
know what I
the
mean?
one thing with the clean water grants is you can't charge if you get those grants. That's why
there you
get
go.
that's why you get the grant.
Right.
Well, I didn't know that.
And
See.
charging for pump outs is kind of a rare
for
thing.
for harbors in like
for
this,
harbors. Yeah.
so like Situate, Hyannis, whatever, they're not charging.
No.
Yeah.
Okay.
Matter of
Well, that's
fact, when you go to, if you're in the boat basin, they actually come around. They got a portable pump they bring around. If you call them, some of the boats can hook directly up, but smaller boats like mine
Don't
can't.
have that, right?
Don't have that, so they'll bring a pump around. Then they've got a hookup right there, and they don't charge either for that. So 'cause they're
I'm
doing
not
the same
proposing
thing.
charging.
Yeah,
I'm just
it's-
saying we should be cognizant that
it's
we're covering
interesting.
that cost.
No, I think we should
One
too.
at a time, guys.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I just.
That's it.
No,
wonder-
it's
Yeah.
fine. I want to hear what you have to say. I just one at a time. It's like no couches, no charge for couches and mattresses at the dump. Otherwise, they're going to end up.
Yeah. No, that's a
out
good.
in the
Yeah.
mowers.
Yeah.
All right. Any other thoughts or questions for Chief at this point?
Real quick
Yeah,
clarification.
Pete, please.
So,
Peter.
little bit of a softball. So we started with one pump boat, one patrol boat, put in for a new patrol boat. We were able to fix the original patrol boat, so now we're gonna have a hybrid pump / patrol boat. That's what this request is for.
It'll be
Okay.
the headhunter that is there now. Have you seen it?
Yeah.
It'll be just like that
Yeah.
With hydraulic shifts.
with hydraulic.
With hydraulics. And you can use it to patrol, quote unquote, but primarily it's more of a second pump boat that's
Yeah.
there's a need for.
The kids that are running the boat, they're out there. What we want them to do is they keep an eye on things and they call
Right.
in when they see something that
So-
needs to be addressed, so that Sheila or one of the assistant harbor masters can go out and actually address it.
And so we'll have essentially one of each plus this one, which is
Right.
2/3 pump.
Yeah.
1/3 Okay.
This is good.
Okay.
All right. Well, thanks for coming in, Chief.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We'll look for that other follow-up when you get access to the software.
Yeah. Yeah, that was all said. I remember it. All that stuff like that.
I guess it warmed up.
Never gonna
I
happen.
appreciate that. I would sit in those chairs too, they're way more comfortable.
Yeah.
Good morning.
Morning.
Thank you for coming.
Thank you for having us.
Same drill, we'll jump right into current year requests and talk a little bit about out years.
So for 2021, we have under our airport improvement program projects, we have a supplemental appropriation request for our security system of just over $2 million. What occurred there is we had about $2 million appropriated previously. As the engineers came in, did their work and investigation, they did an extremely detailed estimate. We went round and round and back and forth with FAA, and Steve, I sent you a copy of a letter that I sent to the government study committee explaining some of the concerns that we have with regard to town meeting form of government and how it impacts our capital and ability to, get things done in a timely manner. This was one of those where we just couldn't get the design work done so that we had enough information for the total project. So it's just a supplemental appropriation. Again, 90%. This is not all 90%. It's 90% of eligible funding, which comes down to about 63% of the project. And typically the state will pick up the remainder. They said they will, but they just don't have the funding in this cycle. But over the next couple of years, they'll be reimbursing us for the majority of the project.
And what do you, sorry to interrupt, but what do you believe what do you think the overall percentage of reimbursement will be roughly, when it's all said and done?
All said and done, should be about 95.
Thank you.
And again, just to recap what the project is, replacing 3 critical systems, the access control system, closed circuit TVs, and the fingerprint and badging systems. We also have an infrastructure project, which is the direct digital control system for the terminal geothermal system. Currently, the best way to describe it is it's all or nothing. We don't have really, our control system has failed completely. And when we need air conditioning, we just turn it all on air. When we need heat, we turn it all on heat. So it's a critical project for saving. We have about 4 maintenance equipment projects, and again, they're all replacement. It's a small dump truck. The generator housing is not necessarily, it is a replacement. They're all rusted out, and it's just replacing those housings. You may see something there. It says 2 new X's. What they are, they're lighted X's that are required when we close a runway that we have to have. They're extremely large, and ours are shot basically. The others are replacement Z-Track, and then in the operational side we have a tug, our buses, and then the ground power unit, all replacement. The bus we're going to do over 2 years, so we're replacing 1 bus this year and looking for the following year. Any questions there before I go out to the out years?
Actually, I have a question. Tom, you mentioned timing and style of government to get things done. What would your recommendation be?
In the paper that I sent, and
And actually, you mentioned that. Would you mind resending? I do not recall ever receiving that. Would you mind resending it?
Yeah, sure.
And maybe through finance, if you don't have my email address correct,
Okay.
because I think it may have got picked up in a spam filter or something.
Right.
But if you send me something of importance and you don't get back from me, please
Sure.
feel free to follow up.
Okay.
Just
And
for the
so
record.
it was a letter to John Brusher from Town Study Committee, and I mentioned to Libby, we had discussion about this too. There's a number of conflicts that timing-wise don't allow us to take advantage of federal grants. As you know, the federal government, occasionally Congress gets a bug up their butt and here's $1 billion towards infrastructure, and you have to have a shovel-ready project. So I've outlined in the paper what some of the challenges are. One of the recommendations, and this was looked at through our legal counsel, was giving the select board the ability to appropriate for these type of projects that are federally funded or reimbursable or whatever. through whatever other checks and balances, whether it's Brian, yourselves, come up with, to make sure we're not going afoul. We don't want to do that. But it just allows us then to take advantage of significant funding. And in that regard, as it relates to some of the out years, we had a meeting with FAA and basically told them we need significant funds because we have major projects coming up. Our taxiway that was appropriated last year, right now it's in about $20 million. We are thinking that might be high, but we need the money to get started, and FAA is asking for an updated estimate on that. We have a need to rehabilitate our entire runway too, the primary runway. And some of the implications or some of the issues that we have are the runway right now is lower than the taxiway. And by standard, they're supposed to be about the same. So discussions with FAA were leave the taxiway alone, get it done, permitting, everybody has agreed because it's in terrible shape. Do it in place as it is. When we come back to do the runway, we'll elevate the runway in some places up to 18 inches. That's a big project.
So back to my question, how would that process be changed to get
Essentially,
approvals quicker?
we would, at the select board meetings, if we had everything lined up and the finances were in place, our money essentially fronting the design, and then we had some level of certainty that we were going to get a grant, we would get the appropriation from the select board, get the design work done, get the bids in hand, put the application in for the FAA, FAA issues the grant, and we would proceed with the project. So it would be essentially appropriating the funds through the select board on a more frequent basis than an annual town meeting. That's a simple answer, if you will, but
Okay.
I'm sure there's a lot more in the detail as to, what.
Is that something you've been led to believe it's viable or not, or you don't know?
Yes, our attorneys have researched it. In fact, and Libby mentioned this too, the select board has some ability, I think, through real estate and maybe one other way of doing something. There are examples that allow them to do that, and our attorneys are pretty confident that it can be done too.
Yeah.
Again, we're not looking to circumvent anything. We just need to make sure,
No, I think it's important because it's a word that Nat used a little bit earlier on selling projects, which is frustrating for myself professionally when you put a lot of work and effort, which is coming from you and your team, comes before us. It's easier lifting for us, but it's frustrating also when we put some effort in and then it gets to a ATM or a vote and all the work you just did and all the money that could have been quasi-free is lost. So in any of those approaches, I'm looking at Brian too, when we figure them out, we'd be asinine not to put it in places so it's normal process instead of what we do now.
this is key in terms of timing because again, we've had meetings with FAA and we pled our case and they basically turned to us and said, don't worry about the money. If we get you the money, can you do it? And we committed yes. And they're talking between $30 and $50 million in the next 3 to 5 years. That's a significant chunk of change, and we don't want to miss out on it. And I outline in the paper some of the examples as to why and what the implications are if we miss and you lose 17 months and then the project goes up again. And
Have you gotten a legal valid response to that letter?
I'm sorry?
Have you received a response to your letter?
No.
I think you
Again,
should follow
what
up and make sure you
The
do.
request of the Town Government Study Committee is their support of a warrant article that we would put forward at this town meeting to allow that to occur. So they had just recently went out about a week or so ago.
So then we have to educate those of us who are going to be
Right, and that's why you
voting on
see
that town warrant.
there's a letter to the town, to John Brusher, and it's an attached draft of a paper that explains the history, the background, the implications, and the potential solutions. And it's labeled draft because it is for discussion so that we can all get on the same page and look at it and, bat it around to say, what's the best solution here?
Good.
Nat, did you have
I
something?
just want to ask Tom a question. This is not specific to this, but I remember you saying the same stuff a year ago. The timing issue stuff. The other issue is the seasonality of doing the work. It's not that easy to do paving in the winter. It has to be done in the fall or the spring. Can't do it in the summer.
Well,
That's the only time you're really open.
So that's, again,
So,
part
you
of
know,
the drawback.
real.
The limited construction season and the timing of FAA grants
Yeah.
versus the timing of the town system, it's just not conducive, and the estimated time is a delay of up to 17 months, and we can't ask contractors to hold pricing for 17
Right.
months. So the alternative is a little bit like what we did with Taxiway Echo. We asked for an appropriation of $20 million. Is it high? Probably. But it gives us enough to get started on design so that we can get the details to find out what the exact numbers are going to be.
Yeah.
One of the other problems that I really don't like about doing it that way is we're telegraphing to contractors, hey, you got a big chunk of money.
And they
And then your prices
overbid.
go like this.
Yeah.
So I think it's a more efficient way to do it if we can do it on a more frequent basis. And again, I'll look to Brian or whatever for whatever checks and balances need to be in place, but we just need the ability to make sure we can turn these things around.
And my other question, this was it for me, is fall town meeting. We talk about that every so often, big ticket item, cost of having the town meeting, but does your problems that you have, would it be helped by a fall town meeting, or is it just more about
It's
the
slightly,
article itself?
it's slightly helped, but not significant.
Okay.
And you'll see in the paper, I think there's 5 different potential resolutions, and from, number 1 to the
Okay,
in priority,
okay, good, okay,
and that's one of them is the second town meeting.
yeah, okay.
So, Tom, on the topic of the change in the procedural changes, what do you foresee, or what have you proposed with respect to capital program committee review and FinCom review? Are you putting them in as a fast track element, or are you anticipating going straight to the select board?
I have no idea on that. I'm gonna leave that up to the administration, however that could work.
Okay. So, and I would suggest that, I think capital program is gonna want to review things, and I
Sure.
think that's certainly reasonable. And it's also part of our town bylaw. But it doesn't sound to me like which will get to my second point in a moment, it doesn't sound like it will be an issue for us to be able to quickly pick up, with a little bit advance notice, which I'm sure you'll have. And I'm not talking months, to
Right.
have a meeting. And the reason that it will be easiest for us to do that, and I think by extension of what you do, the FinCom, is because, and I want to tell you this, you guys have provided us with wonderful, detailed information, which is really our minimum baseline.
They
And
always
I want
do.
to say thank you, and I want to say that in conjunction with this idea of perhaps a faster track without compromising the review process, that I think of any department, I understand other departments would be doing this for various reasons, and you're an enterprise account, but let me just say, as the enterprise account in front of us, you are so ready to do this in terms of the documentation and the backup and the planning that goes into it. I just want you to know that it doesn't go unseen. And insofar as we're concerned, it will be the minimum standard for all departments.
Well, I appreciate that, and it's these two here to do all the background work.
I don't want to overstate that, but I think it's important for you to be aware that we recognize the time goes into it. I echo Peter's comments, the comments that were made previously. Their points well taken. It's incredibly frustrating for us, and more so for you all, to go through the process, to put this all together, and then in the instance of a capital request, to not get it voted in when you know it's needed, but more so when it's literally free money. We're
Almost
literally
free.
walking
That's
away
the
from
other
money
side
on
of
the
it.
table.
Yeah, you don't wanna give up $30-40 million.
Yeah.
Yeah, and
And
there's a
so,
way to sell that. In the old days, it used to get said, if it's gonna go somewhere else. It really needs to be more about what we need and how infrequent that is, and how the timing issue is the big one, in
And
my opinion.
to that point, we made the argument that we have not received any discretionary funds in the last 9 years. We, in our capital improvement plan meeting that we had 2 weeks ago with FAA and MassDOT, they all looked at it and they went around the Commonwealth and they said, yeah, we already got this one covered, this one. They said, you're in line for this, you're ready for it. So we're required to put together this capital improvement plan for FAA. And it's 5 years plus, and we have to identify funding sources and so on and so forth. That kind of drives a little bit about what we're doing here too, so we may have to modify what is already submitted to you because they came back and said, no, you need to do this in this order. The runway, for example, 624, putting that in, we may have to put that in there now. We have to put it in as an additional element to our environmental assessment, because the FAA said you need to get it done the next few years, so you have to move that up in your EA. So we're working on it, but it's a juggling act, meeting a set of deadlines from FAA and a set of deadlines from town, and we're trying to merge them together. And sometimes it just gets not cumbersome, but inefficient, and that's what we're trying to minimize.
Yeah.
So on the out years, though, again, the big project, 2023, we're looking at the runway. In the interim, we initially had proposed continuing rehabilitation of, I'm sorry.
Tom, one second, I'm sorry, did you have something on this before we moved out?
No, I just think that Tom, it's, once again, not to beat a dead horse, but I think it's important to provide us with what follow-up you receive to your request, because that's going to help us too, understanding that process. I mean, you're doing a ton of legwork for the Fed, and then the free money is waiting there at the end of you doing the work, and it's being taken away from you by our collective, our as a town process.
We'll let everybody know, trust me, that's why we're trying to get this out in front before the 624 project. We're in okay shape right now for Taxiway Echo, which is a 20 million one, and they're gonna fight to get us that money plus the runway. So we're okay right now, but there are some other projects that they're fitting in between the taxiway and the runway that they want us to get done. Again, they're looking at discretionary money, so.
And just to be clear on procedural aspects, so you believe or you don't believe, I'm sorry if I missed this, you're waiting for a reply with respect to whether this would need to be something, a change in the procedure would need to go to town meeting for a vote? Or no?
My understanding from our attorneys is it would require a warrant article town meeting to allow the select board to do this. We're asking the government study committee for their support. We also sent it to town administration and the select board to see if they would, we're still, I guess, determining who would sponsor the warrant article. I don't know.
And have you had, I don't want to get into, I understand. Have you had support from the concept from town admin or no?
A very brief discussion with Libby, and yes, but again, I don't think they haven't had a chance to look at the entire document and everything.
Okay,
They just sent it out probably.
No, that's fine. I just wanted to get a very brief but accurate lay of the land. So with that having been said, I would suggest that at the appropriate time, I would suggest, one, that capital program and FinCom processes would be followed, but it would be on a much more, a quicker
Different
turnaround
schedule
time.
maybe,
Yeah, as necessary, subject to reasonable advance notice, which I'm sure you would give. And that you would reach out when you have kind of the foundational elements in place with a letter asking for the respective committees' concurrence.
Yeah.
Because I think it's important for us to discuss as a committee officially,
Absolutely.
once it's gotten to the point that it's a topic for us to discuss.
Yeah, we're not trying to circumvent that.
I understand, and that's why I'm being very careful about how I say it, because I don't want it to be misperceived that we're looking to, bootstrap your request or circumvent anything. I'm just saying, when it comes to the time, if it comes to the time, when it comes to the time, I think with respect to getting this at town meeting, allowing us as individual members of the citizenry to be able to contribute to the process of informing people. If it comes to us as a formal matter, that's one aspect of it, and the other aspect is that we've been involved and we can get out there, we can talk about it.
Yeah, because we would appreciate your support as well.
Sure.
So.
Peter?
Yeah, I think that, that myself, and not to speak for anyone else, you have my support, and I think that process that we should be part of advocating for the airport back to town admin and the select board is we support this, because if we can use Fed money instead of taxpayer money, I mean.
Yeah, I'm not gonna wait to get your letter to talk to people about it,
No, we shouldn't.
And
because we need to do, that's exactly it.
But
We
to
need
your
be.
point, in terms of the educational process, you're absolutely right. It's using federal and state money.
Yeah.
Because we already have grant assurances that say we're gonna do X, Y, and Z, and if we don't do it, then we end up having to pay back a lot of money too.
Yeah.
So the financial implications are significant.
Is there interest accrued?
I didn't ask.
I'm just curious.
I don't know. I don't believe so, but
there's not a punitive measure either, obviously, then, if there's no interest.
I don't even want to get into that, to be honest with you.
But it's part of the, it's
certainly
part of the
something we'll
calculus, you
check
know?
out, yeah.
You know, so if people understand that, geez, you know, we proceed with one of these projects, but we can't proceed, we don't get the grant money, or we've got grant money.
Yeah, what the implications are.
Yeah, important information. Okay, great. Other questions, comments? I just want to say on your particulars, I do appreciate the fact that food truck came in. I think that that's an incredibly reasonable quote for the F-250 crew, the crew cab. And I'll just summarize the others that they all seem well within reason for both the primary request and any accessories or options. All well priced. So thank you for your diligence in getting us information.
You're welcome. Again, out years, we are probably going to be doing some apron expansion work in between the runway and taxiway, because the airport engineer, who's also a certification inspector, indicated they are very concerned about us parking airplanes on and closing the crosswind runway. They deem that as a very serious safety issue. So, although our master plan shows a very large expansion of that south apron, I don't think it will be anywhere near it. We're looking for relief of maybe 6 to 10 airplanes, larger size, to be able to just park them down there and get them off the existing parking area. So we have some environmental work, some permitting, and some other things taking place in between time, so that we can get this 624 project underway in the next few years.
Okay.
And there may be some, you know, small projects along the way in terms of replacement equipment and things like that. But I just wanted to let you know what some of the big elements are, and we will be updating our request based on what direction we got from FAA.
Okay, good.
Just a quick question. Tom, this 18-inch thing, how does that get fixed?
I'm sorry?
The 18-inch different thing you mentioned earlier?
Yeah.
That
so-
isn't like a small
No,
project.
it's not at all. It's a
That's
significant.
a lot of asphalt.
It's a lot of dirt work too.
I
There's
mean,
a
you got to
dip-
go
there's a
down
dip
to,
in that,
you
you know.
got to go completely down to dirt,
Well,
or
there's a,
What?
so part of the problem, or the reason for the expense of both the taxiway and the runway are that they've exceeded their useful life, but their initial design was for much lighter aircraft. And now we've got
yeah, I know.
JetBlue coming in with the A220 in a couple of years,
Yeah.
along with the E190 that they're using now, and they're
Yeah.
much heavier. So it's not just a mill and overlay, it's going down and changing some of that box or subbase.
Yeah.
The same with the runway. It's gonna have the same issues, but what you may have to do is just increase some of that subbase, bringing it up, as well as additional layers of asphalt. And because of the complications with it, that's where FAA, the engineers all said, let's put that off, look at it in a little more detail, leave the taxiway where it is, and we'll elevate that runway.
Is there flooding due to this at all?
No, it's not a drainage issue,
Okay,
it's a
okay.
standards issue with regard to slopes that
Yep.
the FAA has, and so
Yeah.
we would be required to get, and we're working on it, modification standards for the taxiway.
Okay.
And FAA said that's the best way to go, but they only issue them for limited time. They don't allow them to go too far. So essentially, they're committing themselves to it by saying, hey, you know, you gotta get this done. And in terms of timing, I think you may know they put 1.5 billion into infrastructure. They've issued a lot of grants for that. What it's doing is it's freeing up the standard discretionary money, and that's what we're getting in line for. And runways and taxiways are very high priority. So.
Okay, good. And then just with respect, I think FY22, you had airport security around 360,000. Do you anticipate, is that part of what this package is?
Airport security
For your out years in a previous submission you had? I don't have the latest
it's
update.
probably fencing,
Okay.
because the rest of the system is all being rehabilitated.
Okay.
We try to do some fencing every year if we can, because it's amazing how it deteriorates.
Yeah. Okay. Good. All right. Any other questions or comments for Tom at this point? Peter?
On your John Deere, Does it, would it help you if you had a wider track or a wider
Z
mower
track,
base?
And I'll turn that over to Noah because we have one that we're purchasing now that has what we need for it. So it's all part of our comprehensive management plan that we have to do. And between Noah and maintenance, they figure out which ones they need. So I couldn't answer that, but
Yeah, but I believe this Z-Track specifically is the one that we use for cutting around the taxiway lights, so the narrow track is actually necessary.
Because of the turn radius.
Yes.
And that's all we use it for, is just going in around lights and whatnot.
they're close
Correct,
in
and the
areas.
outer
that's right.
path is followed by the brush hog path.
Okay, good. All right, thank you.
Excellent. All right, well, hey, thanks for all your work and thanks for coming in this morning.
Thank you.
And please do follow up on that.
I will. I'll make sure you get that.
I'm
letter.
sure you will.
And I'll
Well, I think we
leave it
should
to
make a
you to
request.
circulate to the committee or whatever.
Yeah.
Okay.
We'll actually have a discussion about it as a green sheet item.
Absolutely.
So that'll go to FinCom through us. And
Should even select, should go,
There is
yeah.
one other
Yeah,
item I wanted to make the committee aware of. And I hope I'm not taking anybody off guard here. There's an item that we've been looking at and working with all town departments, and it's at PFAS. We are initially going in one direction with our own consultant. We are working now with the town consultant on and all other town departments on a strategic approach, but we don't know where that's going to shake out or how from a capital request. So I just wanted to make sure you know that it's not in here yet. We're still working with other town departments, figuring out how it's all going to be structured and things. So
And so is this something that you've explored on the finance side, with finance at all?
I
or-
don't even know if it's come up to the finance level. We've simply just been talking about strategic approach and what the consultants are going to do, what work may have to be done, what departments are going to have to do what.
And can you broaden that out for the group a little bit in terms of?
So, this PFAS is a chemical, obviously, that gets into the drinking water, and you may have heard of it. We initially, in consultation, DEP sent us a request for information, a very detailed and thorough request, because a lot of this apparently was generated from foam that airports use for firefighting that we're required to discharge each year. So NOAA replied to the request of DEP, and essentially we had to sit down with them and said, all right, where are you going next with this? And we are contemplating doing some sampling and testing with a consultant. And DEP was on the fence whether or not they were going to do it or whether we should do it, and they didn't have the money, so we were looking at, and we got a scope of work and cost to do it. But at the same time, it came up through other town departments. They have similar issues, and it's kind of like a domino that if one group does it, the rest is going to have to follow. And how's it going to all? What are the implications for the entire island? So we've been working with Rob and other departments and the consultant to get an understanding exactly what that is, and kind of like who goes first, who's the priority, what's DEP going to do, are they going to do the testing, and so on and so forth. So there's a lot of unknowns, but they have a very good consultant, CDM Smith, that's working on it. These folks know their stuff. We've briefed them. We got them into where we are. They've been in touch with DEP. So I just wanted to make you aware of it, that it's going to become a capital item, but whether or not it's a town-wide one and we pay up through the town, or it's a separate airport one, or we don't know how all that's going to work just yet.
And so this is just, it's, the acronym is PFAS?
There's PFOS and PFAS.
Because this is an interesting one, I'm not gonna go down the rabbit hole of whether straws or.
So my genius is here.
Or the Three Rivers in India is where we should be stopping plastic outflows. But one of the really brilliant aspects of going to plant-based takeout containers is how they keep the gravy and the grease off your lap, is by impregnating these with the PFASs that then go to our landfill, that leach into our water source, that pollute, in our instance, a sole source aquifer. So we get these little things that are printed up and they look like a wood container and they look great, and
Yeah, but
we all
they're
feel
gonna
better,
have
we're saving the
someone else.
environment, but we're actually, making our water source
The professionals from CDM basically said it's in everything.
So I guess the reason I bring up the background is I'm just kind of curious. It sounds like as a townwide, departmental-wide, this will be looked at with respect to solid waste in addition to,
Everything.
okay.
Yeah, it's all being, because again, and I think one of the challenges was every consultant will tell you if you look for it, you're going to find it. So rather than one department looking for it and then finding it and somebody, else, we're trying to say, okay, how are we gonna do this as a comprehensive strategic? Because it's an island line issue.
So I'll talk to Brian, just for our purposes. I think where we get it in our SIP, our 10-year plan, will be a question, but it sounds like it will. What we do want to have is a placeholder, because our placeholders are a line item that allow us to kind of generate or discussion, or at least recall that there's something going on. And I want to thank you for bringing it up, because that's one of the 10 things on my list now. I won't be getting up at 4:30 in the morning to think about.
Well, again, I didn't want to get out of line, but
No,
just
I
know it's
appreciate you
something we've been
mentioning it.
working on, so.
No, it's important that we know that there might be a cost coming up to the airport on this, so appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right, guys. So we're gonna jump right to our. Sorry.
Yeah, see, there it is. Okay, so we've got it.
I just want to bring up our. Feel free to.
No, what this is interesting what Pete is saying. We're voting to not accept money that's not ours. Like, it's pretty amazing.
It's kind of
I
scary,
don't know
actually.
what to say about that, really. So,
But it sounds like we're headed in the right direction with the process.
yeah.
Okay, so guys, we have our RORIs to fill out, and it's come up on a regular basis that it's beneficial for us to have some discussion if we need to, which I wholeheartedly support. So this is the time that we would do that. If I do know the obvious, that there are some
The
missing,
DPW ones,
and
yeah.
there's information we don't have on some. So if we want to hold off on those, that's fine. Or if we want to do you want to just maybe talk about airport?
That's all we have is
Yeah.
report.
Well,
So
no,
our list.
police, the two police ones.
We
They're
don't
in
have-
Yeah,
there.
but
we
there's
don't
really
have
no,
backup.
there's no backup.
Yeah, so
Wow.
I don't want to proceed with those.
Even though one is groundhog and we've
I don't
already
have a
approved it.
problem with that. I mean,
Well, the difficulty is twofold, Nat. One is, there's a process for a reason.
I understand, but some stuff is, that
That's
vote,
not how I
that vote
run.
makes sense.
It's fine, but
Yeah,
I don't want to get, the thing is it's just in terms of our efficiency, I don't want to get into a discussion about police stuff when we don't have all the information. So
Yeah,
it's-
in theory, that's part of the education for the voter.
Yeah.
If they really wanted to look and go through our minutes and documents,
Yeah.
that's
I get-
where it is. And if it doesn't, if it's
Yeah.
not there, then it
What
should be
basis do
voted
we have?
down.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I get what you're saying, like some of this stuff doesn't need to be, we don't need to write a
Yeah.
book about it.
yeah,
So I don't question that. It's more about how the information fits into the process, and then doing it consistently so that there's not people think there's a free pass.
Yeah.
Which the airport clearly does not.
Lack of information also, it could result in the wrong decision down the road. If we don't have that information to make decisions with, then we lose the ability to, even just a narrative is helpful to generate questions that gets you to understand the project.
Yeah.
And we look back on items that we should have voted on in the past that went south, and maybe we didn't have the information for it, but the information allows us to have that basis for making a decision.
Yeah, so for instance, solid waste, we're gonna need to get information, so we're gonna have a follow-up meeting. So we could have saved Rob the time this morning by not coming in, and saved ourselves the time.
It also hammers the point that you need to get information to us.
Yeah, so we'll work on that. It's a
don't we?
process, I get
Yeah,
it.
right.
And I don't disagree at all. So, Rory's.
Yep.
Is there, just if you guys have any thoughts or comments on the particular request for the airport. So under the airport maintenance and equipment, they had the crew cab with plow, accessories, at $28,000 for a F-250 4x4.
Yeah, I was surprised.
That's
is-
cheap.
It's cheap.
Is it new?
And then they got plow and all the rest of the equipment. Yeah, it's new. The LED runway closure markers, the track mower, and I didn't get into the general housing with him. I had to do some pricing on stuff like that. And I know that that's
Did it
really tight.
did it say where they're getting that for 28 grand?
Yeah, it's MCM. I think it's a state.
Ah.
So they do it on volume.
Yeah, gotcha.
They do primarily state contracts. Good for us.
Yeah.
But these trucks come with crank windows, steel rims, you know, AM, FM, Philco radio from the 70s. I mean, it's amazing how low they are.
Horrible. That's all I need. Well, it's a runway truck.
Philco.
I'm just saying. Still make those old radio.
So if there's questions or discussion you guys want to have on those, let's do it now, and if
Well, sure.
not, that's okay too. Okay.
So if you want us to fill that one out?
Yeah,
no
go ahead
problem
and
with
fill
that.
them in. If you want to do
Yeah.
it now, that's
Yeah.
great. I prefer that if we don't have questions, that we kind of do it after the fact, if we haven't done it already, and then we can just move through our agenda and move on. So if you're having afternoon coffee, you can sit down and do this, or maybe crack one open after evening and do it. I think we've got. I think the green sheet is an element we should discuss for putting something on it for, as a result of this meeting. I think it's worthy of discussion to discuss what the actual text would be, because we don't want to create a misperception. And I'm talking about this concept of a faster track as opposed to a fast track, because words have meaning and it could be misperceived, but a faster process to have worthy airport capital requests financed or approved. And I would suggest that we would add something along those lines to the green sheet. I'll get to the green sheet purpose just to reiterate it in a second. To just inform the finance committee and the select board through our liaisons when they give their committee reports that we have discussed it briefly, but initially it is something we, think is a good idea. And then that will in itself create discussion and hopefully positive discussion, whether it's, constructive criticism or whatnot, it gets the discussion going. So then that was the intent of the green sheet, is to pass on things so that to our respective liaisons, public body, that they may not remember if it's a Monday afternoon or a Tuesday or Wednesday evening when they have their meeting or whatnot. It just makes it simpler.
So are you going to pull that together for the green sheet?
Yeah, I would just suggest that what we would do is you guys would say, Mr. Chairman, put together a sentence or two with, through finance, we'll do it, hopefully with Al's help. And then it would be issued to you guys, you just get a copy of it. So our liaisons would be Nat at NPDC, yourself at FinCom, and Jason at the Select Board.
So then I would say change airport to all departments, because if there's similar, faster, legal, legitimate tracks that we, or should the community can take overall for other departments that get grant monies, and it was a little head shake to the left and right, but if there is, then that should be the request instead of just specific to airport.
Can I make a suggestion?
Sure.
Your point is well taken. I think in the interest of keeping it simple and then having the discussion broaden out to that topic at the respective boards.
Got it.
We
Keep
would-
it airport.
And then that also keeps us out of the muck.
Yeah, you're right.
Is that okay?
That's perfect. Thank you.
And then if you guys want to get into it, you're good with it, but we're not,
I have good peripheral vision.
yeah, I saw it. Okay, so I'll take care of that. Any comments or thoughts on good of the order? Oh, before we go to good of the order, I sent out a copy of the schedule. Libby, Ally, Rebecca, and I met to discuss a realistic schedule for our budget season and when we will issue our report. And I sent you guys a copy of that. I'd like to note for your information that January 29th, which is the last date shown, was recorded as a Monday. That's been changed to a Wednesday because it's actually a Wednesday. And that there may be other changes to this as we get things proofed, but I wanted you to be aware that it's there. And then I was gonna highlight two dates, and then I'll take Peter's comments or questions. So,
Mr. Chairman, if I could just interrupt for a second. Late to this meeting, I was meeting with the town manager regarding the Capcom schedule. There's two minor changes in it, which she'll be sending to you, so it's not a huge change from the schedule you're looking at, but if you do need to approve this, there's gonna be a follow-up schedule.
Okay, and what do those changes pertain to, without, you don't have to get to.
Just like a status update involving, select board and FinCom, should all of those groups think that those meetings are necessary.
Okay, and do you have a date for that?
One is mid-December, I believe the 16th, and then one is the Monday before the final presentation of the detail, or the final, recommendation report of the detail, so the 27th.
And what I've suggested, just so you guys are aware, is that we don't, I don't, based on the way the process worked in the last two budget seasons, and the town manager gives an update on capital project status to the select board during their meetings, as we get into the point of where we've kind of made discussions and things have kind of begin to solidify, that I'm happy to have update meetings, but I certainly don't know that we need two of them, especially one before the week that we're gonna issue our report. And if we really need two of them, if we really need one of them, I'll leave it to you all to help decide that. Our charge is 30 days before town meeting to provide a report of recommendations to the select board. That's our charge. And I'm not suggesting that we would do that bare minimum at that late date, but I just want to be clear. Peter, I'm sorry, you had a comment.
No, the unfortunate thing is I won't be in country the end of January for that meeting,
Okay.
which is, I love that meeting, but I won't be here.
Okay.
Sorry.
And just to be clear too, we had in our preliminary schedule with Libby, we had scheduled the joint meeting that we had last year with the select board and the FinCom at the select board's regular meeting for, I believe it was February 5th. And as a result of our 9/11 meeting, based upon some presumptions, including that one of the meetings we previously scheduled would not have been canceled, and everyone comes in with information going forward, we were able to move that date up to January 29th. So we were able to shave a week off our schedule. And I'm hoping that we can keep that. So that schedule, we don't need to vote on it. But I would like a sense of you all that we need to be getting information complete, review departments in full, before we make a final recommendation and issue a report. Is that generally no dissent on that? Okay,
Yes.
good, thank you. Green sheet we covered. Any thoughts, good of the order?
Just curious, where are we finding our out year reports when we're going over out years?
I'm gonna be
Is that
discussing.
anything that we should have when they're talking about it, or?
Yeah, I'm gonna follow up. I've been in touch with Brian this morning and I'm gonna follow up with him on that.
Okay. Is that gonna be built into our
I-
online, or will it just be like, this is a one-page out year for this department?
No, we've actually discussed at some point having access through the software, so we'll actually be able to pull up any number of years and departments. But in the meantime, I think what would be appropriate is to get the latest
Plan it, print out.
printout sent to us in a PDF for all the departments.
Right.
And perhaps even a link within the Nantucket capitalrequest.org. So if we didn't save it to a particular folder, or we're looking on our phone versus our tablet, we can just log in and it's there.
Yeah. Just making sure we don't have access to it right now when they're going over their out years, because.
Yeah, it's kind of difficult to have a discussion without the information. So yeah. Okay. Yes. Point well taken. And any other thoughts? And going once, twice, three times. Can I please have a motion?
So
Adjourn.
moved.
Second.
Excellent. Thank you, guys.